Chapter 51, Final Battle. When another portal opened in the skies above Metropolis City, nobody noticed it. Though the Parademon's rampage had not lasted for long before Dr. Fate's spell annihilated them, those few minutes had been enough for hundreds of people to die and for the entire city to be thrown into chaos. "Where's everyone?" Naruto was the first to ask after coming out of the portal that Kurama had created to transport them. Wonder Woman frowned and looked around as she even flew down from the skies, closer to the city below. She could see no metahumans fighting, no Darkseid, and no parademons. There were just regular people, running about in a panic and the police forces looking as scared and unorganized as the rest of the civilians. Naruto and Diana arrived only moments after Dr. Fate's forbidden spell had erased all traces of enemies from Metropolis City and even put Darkseid on the run. "Give me a moment," he said and closed his eyes. When he opened them, his pupils became a horizontal bar crossed by a slit and an orange pigmentation appeared at the corners of his eyes. He had entered Sage mode. Every life signature in the city appeared in his mind's eye as he focused on the sensing ability of his Sage mode. There were so many people below, over 10 million, that he could never hope to single out a random guy out of them. However, Metahuman's life signature was different from that of regular humans, to speak nothing of that of a god. Brighter, stronger, bigger. Sometimes even of a different color. Maybe they managed to move the fight away from the city. It's definitely something that John and Batman would think about in order to reduce crossfire casualties. "Expand your senses towards the ocean," Wonder Woman reasoned. Following her advice, he focused his Sage mode sense towards the ocean. And there, a few miles away from the shore, a group of very powerful life signatures appeared on his radar. "It's as you said. They're out, in the open ocean, at 7 o'clock. A coat of yellow-red chakra appeared around his body and transformed his clothes into a garment of light and energy. 10 ominous black spheres appeared at his back as well. He had entered his six-path Sage mode. "You're faster, go ahead. Take my dagger and throw it at Darkseid, in his blind spot. I will teleport there in an instant with a very big surprise for him," he said and began to form a Bijidama into his left hand. Despite the dire situation, Diana let out a smile at his words. She took the tri-pronged dagger from his right hand and raised her other hand at him, balling into a fist. "You don't have a long time in that form while on Earth. Let's end this fast," she said. "Yes. You take care too, don't get overconfident," he chided. "Right back at you." Sharing a smile, the two bumped their fists against each other. Then, a sonic boom echoed in the air as Diana burst at her fastest speed towards Darkseid's location. Wonder Woman arrived at the scene just in time to witness how Darkseid fired an Omega beam out of his remaining eye and reaped the life of yet another member of the Justice League of America. Steel was disintegrated, down to the tiniest atoms. His sledgehammer was the only thing that had remained of him as he had dropped it right before the beam hit him. A powerful voice resounded across the battlefield. "In brightest day, in darkest night, no evil shall escape my sight." As John Stewart said the oath of the Green Lantern Corps, a brilliant green light started gathering into his power ring. Witnessing yet another comrade dying in front of him, he cursed his weakness. He cursed his own lack of will, lack of strength to attack with the intent to kill. Even after the Justice League was reformed by Superwoman and Batman into the Justice League of America, which used deadly force and extreme means against incurable criminals, John Stewart himself had never broken the code of the Green Lanterns, that of never using deadly force. However, at this moment, filled with righteous anger and determination, he told himself, "No more. If the Guardians will strip me of my ring and exile or imprison me, then so be it." He could no longer watch any more of his comrades perish in battle. Too many had died already. Bearing that bitterness and extreme determination, he shouted the last two verses of the oath at the top of his lungs. "Let those who worship evil's might beware of my power, Green Lantern's light." Green light shone around his ring so brightly that his body could not be seen clearly anymore. Warning: willpower exceeding power ring capabilities. But John did not realize what he had just done at that moment, that his will had surpassed the limits of the most powerful weapon in the universe, that he had found the limits of what was supposed to be limitless. No, he was only thinking about one thing: killing Darkseid to save his brothers in arms. The god of evil abruptly released another wave of his matrix of agony, making all the heroes that were attacking him collapse from the air while screaming in agony. Superwoman had been among them too, and she fell into the ocean as well, her body twitching uncontrollably from the excruciating pain. Then, Darkseid turned his head towards the Green Lantern. His supernatural senses warned him of mortal danger. In front of him, John Stewart was a sight to behold. Darkseid had seen many and even killed a bunch of Green Lanterns with his own two hands. However, never before had he seen a Green Lantern exuding such power. It was when he locked his remaining eye on him to fire his Omega beams that John also pointed his power ring at him. It was as if a railgun was fired. A beam of light like that of a star-destroying cannon shot forth from his ring, a beam of light containing the transformed will of the man who even managed to surpass the limits of the most powerful weapon in the universe. Momentarily, they were all blinded by the brilliant emerald light. When they regained their sight, everyone stared in amazement at the sight in front of them. Darkseid's left arm had been vaporized. But then, a deafening sound ruptured the sky and everyone abruptly turned their heads toward it. A split second before the Omega beams impacted Jon Stewart's defenseless body, a white and gold armored silhouette seemingly teleported in front of him. Diana had appeared in front of him at the very last moment with a shunshin, her golden shield raised protectively in front of him. A deep sound like that of a gong resounded for miles when Darkseid's Omega beam slammed into her round shield. But after a brief struggle, the Omega beam dissipated. Wonder Woman's golden shield was made of Amazonium, the same as her bracelets of submission. It was one of the very few things in the universe that could resist the effect of the Omega beams. Darkseid screamed in anger and he lunged at the Green Lantern hiding behind the Amazon princess. But his charge was met head-on by Diana and she slammed her shield into his chest. The shockwave generated by their collision blasted away all the members of the Justice League in the vicinity and threw them hundreds of feet away. The outcome of the gods' clash left both Diana and Darkseid dizzy and sluggish. Nevertheless, even as she shook her head to remove the cobwebs darkening her sight, she grasped the tri-pronged dagger from her waist and flung it at Darkseid's still motionless body in the distance. The god of evil took notice of the incoming projectile but he reckoned that due to her momentary dizziness, her aim was too poor to hit him. And it was as he had thought, the dagger whirred 2 feet above his head, not even close to hitting him. But just after the dagger went past him, he saw the white-haired woman make a strange sign with the hand that was not holding the shield. In the very next moment, an enormous magic signature materialized behind him out of nowhere. It was such a powerful aura that Darkseid instinctively twisted his body in a desperate attempt to dodge whatever was coming at him. However, he was too late. As Diana activated the Hiraishin tag on the flying dagger with a one-handed ram seal, Naruto teleported right behind Darkseid's back with a massive sphere of purple-black chakra in his right hand. Bijudama! It was as if a miniature sun was birthed in the sky. Not for the first time that day, everyone lost their sight, even the members of the JLA who had been thrown into the distance by the shockwave that had resulted from Wonder Woman and Darkseid's collision. It was not a foreign sight for the people of Earth. It was eerily similar to the detonation of an atomic bomb, both in appearance and in power. The JL members retreated in a panic to a safe distance away and watched in disbelief the massive explosion and the gigantic mushroom of fire that rose in the air. They had no idea what was going on. The explosion had barely died down when the 10 truth-seeking orbs at Naruto's back all of a sudden transformed into long, pitch-black chains and wrapped around Darkseid's body. 9 shadow clones and the original Naruto all grabbed the ends of each chain and pulled with their entire sage of the 6 paths physical strength. The god of evil was barely conscious at this point. The skin over his entire body had been melted off, revealing raw flesh. He looked like one big charred wound. If that was not enough, indestructible chains wrapped around his body as if they were alive and dug painfully into his flesh down, to the bone. A scream of pain and agony came from the depth of his chest and his matrix of agony burst forth with his rage. However, said ability did not travel through the chains as he had hoped. Diana, now! Naruto and his shadow clones shouted simultaneously as they held onto the chains restricting Darkseid with their entire might. Wonder Woman used a body flicker movement technique to teleport to 60 feet behind Darkseid's body. Strapping her golden shield on her back, she grabbed the sealing scroll hanging from the belt around her waist. With dexterous movements, she unfurled the scroll in the blink of an eye and slapped her palm on top of it. A plume of smoke obscured her sight for a second, but when the wind blew it away, a glass-like blue spear appeared in her hand. It was the Radion spear. She raised the glass-like spear above her shoulder and took aim. As her body became surrounded by an aura of blue light, her long white hair started to rise in the air, defying gravity. Sparks of lightning started dancing across the spear's body until they engulfed it completely. For the 3rd time that day, Darkseid's instincts warned him of his impending death, just like when Dr. Fate cast his sacrificial spell or when Green Lantern fired his strongest power ring attack. But this time around, he could do nothing to avoid it. There was no dodging it, there was no running away from it because the 10 truth-seeking orbs that had been transformed into chains were wrapped around his body, immobilizing him completely. Filled with desperation and rage, he fired one last Omega beam from his remaining eye. However, he could not see her and lock his Omega beams on her because Diana had purposely teleported behind his back before taking out the Radion spear. The deadly attack did not even come close to hitting her. A deafening explosion boomed as an object several times faster than the speed of sound split the sky. Darkseid's tough, divine body that had endured so much punishment and damage until then became as feeble as that of a newborn human at the contact with the sharp tip of the Radion spear. It pierced through his spine, into his heart and came out of his chest too, effortlessly. Then, it shattered. The shards of the Radion spear melted instantly at the contact with his blood, turning into the poisonous substance known to be lethal even to gods. Blood leaked out from Darkseid's mouth and his remaining eye lost focus. Just a few grams of Radion would be enough to poison a new god to death, to speak nothing of an amount as large as a spear fully made of it. Finally, the god of evil breathed his last. Even as he died, his face still displayed a frozen expression of helplessness and rage. Chapter 52 Epilogue. The Bijou Empire, ruled by the god of destruction, truth, and justice, Kurama has expanded greatly in a short period of time, in a matter of years extending well beyond the borders of the Vega system. Hundreds of different species of people, living on dozens of different planets worship the 10-tailed fox god who, in spite of his epithet as a god of destruction, is a benevolent and fair god, one that his subjects adore. The headquarters of the Bijou Empire is located on planet Karna, in the Vega system, and the capital city of this planet was named Great Naruto City in honor of god Kurama's brother, God Naruto. Not much is known about this mysterious god except that he is married to a silver-haired goddess and that the two of them like to wander the universe, in the guise of mercenaries. But it is clear that god Kurama holds the greatest form of respect and love for him. Great Naruto City is an enormous metropolis spanning over 20,000 square miles. Contrary to how most large cities in other advanced civilizations from all over the universe look like, Great Naruto City does not consist of countless skyscrapers, nor does it show visible signs of pollution, and there are no slums on the outskirts either. A peculiar characteristic of the city is that none of the buildings is allowed to have more than 9 floors above the ground. The presence of an all-knowing and all-seeing God makes this city a utopia. That is not to say that there are no fights and arguments among family members, lovers, co-workers, etc. However, there are no violent crimes, no corruption, no human trafficking, and no other heinous acts. Anyone who commits such grave crimes, no matter how important, wealthy, or powerful they are instantly executed with but a thought of god Kurama. Such is the situation not just in Great Naruto City but all across the territory of the Bijou Empire too. This kind of order, unity, and prosperity is extremely rare in the universe at large, almost unheard of. This reality, coupled with the fact that god Kurama's religion does not have any stringent laws and rituals, every month, leaders from new planets are willingly coming to pay their respects to the 10-tailed fox god and ask him to take their homeworlds under his rule. The Bijou Empire's borders are expanding extremely fast without god Kurama or the military might of the empire taking any specific actions. Last month, the president of Morn planet from Altair system and the queen of Ars planet from Sirius system became vassals of the empire as well. Finally over, a young girl said and let out a sigh of relief. It felt strange for her to talk in such a reverent manner about her own family, but she had to in order to keep up the pretense of an ordinary girl at school. None of her classmates knew that she was the daughter of 2 gods, that she was a young little goddess herself, or that the almighty god Kurama was her adorable uncle. Uncle Kurama, I finished my homework, she yelled and jumped up from her chair, flying out of the room. Still flying, the girl burst from one room to another like a small hurricane, startling all the attendants she passed by. But when she was about to enter the personal quarters of Kurama, a yellow-skinned old man with orange hair and dressed in red robes cut in her way and bowed respectfully. Princess. I'm afraid my lord is meditating now. He usually does not like to be disturbed in such moments. But he promised we'd play after I finish my homework, the girl whined. I even wrote the essay for the history class as he wanted, praising how great he and his empire are. I didn't write the truth about how he's a lazy bum that does nothing but sleep the whole day. The old attendant started sweating bullets at the young girl's words. If said by anyone else, it would probably be seen as blasphemy. That young girl, however, had a very special status. You little twerp, who are you calling a lazy bum? Bad-mouthing me behind my back, eh? The deep growl that came from Kurama's personal quarters reverberated throughout the entire temple. The little girl broke into a wide smile. Uncle Kurama, she yelled out in enthusiasm and shot forth like a bullet towards the horse-sized golden fox that appeared from behind the 2 large doors of his quarters. The former Bijou could not hold back a toothy grin at the sight of the overexcited girl launching herself at him. His smile widened from one ear to another when she slammed into his 10 tails and started hugging them. Ah, so fluffy. So beautiful. So cute. Ah, I love this, the little girl gushed and cooed as she rubbed her cheeks on his golden fur. Kurama chuckled heartily and used his tails to make her sit properly on his back, to ride him. Ow! Hey, not the ears, let go, he cried out when she grabbed him by his long rabbit-like ears as if they were a harness. Nah. Don't lie, I know it doesn't hurt you. QB had a tick mark on his temple. Damn it, Thea, I'm a god. What would my people say if they saw you not only riding on my back but also pulling on my ears like that? Grandpa over there sees you and he doesn't think anything less of you, does he? The fox and the little girl both turned to look at the old attendant at the same time. The skin over the old man's arms and back broke into goosebumps. Damn it, princess, are you trying to have me killed? He thought, on the verge of crying. He could only force himself to smile and shake his head. His crying smiling face was terrible to look at. Nothing will ever reduce my lord's majesty. His great poise does not falter even when dash. Reno. I'm embarrassed for your sake. You can retire for the day, Kurama said, feeling himself blush at how the old man was forced to lie through his teeth by the young girl. The attendant did not need to be told twice. Bowing deeply with his right hand on his heart, he made himself scarce the next instant. I swear I gotta have a talk with your parents about his. I'm not your babysitter for them to dump you on my doorstep whenever they go out on a mission. I'm a god. And I'm an emperor too. More than 50 billion souls depend on me every day. I don't have time to waste playing around with you. The little girl giggled at his snarky words. You're always saying things you don't mean, Uncle Kurama, I know you. Daddy says you're a tsundere. But I still love you so much, she said and wrapped both her arms around his neck, hugging him dearly. The fur on Kurama's neck bristled at the young girl calling him a tsundere, but all his annoyance melted away the moment she said she loved him and embraced him. Unknowingly, little Thea had her doting Uncle Kurama wrapped around her little finger. Oi, when are you coming back? A deep voice suddenly rang in Naruto's head. What happened? He asked back in his thoughts. Come get your Sprog, I can't deal with her anymore. She's as annoying as you used to be as a kid, except less dumb and more adorable. I can't even smack her around as I would do to you. Naruto inwardly chuckled at the fox's words, not buying his victim act in the least. We should be back by tomorrow. We found him, Kurama. We finally found him. For over a decade, he and Diana had spent a fortune on information brokers to find a certain man. 10 years was a very long time to be relentlessly searching for someone, but Naruto was nothing if not tenacious. His efforts finally bore fruit today. Good, Kurama replied. The little monkey told me to tell you to not forget to bring her hot ice. I won't. Talk to you later, bro. With that, Naruto ended their telepathic chat and turned his attention back to the matter at hand. A tall and athletic woman with waist-long silver hair and garbed in white and golden armor stood next to a similarly athletic woman with blonde hair and wearing what looked like the robes queens used to wear in ancient Greece on Earth. They were none other than Diana and her mother, Hippolyta. Diana's face was cold but serene. Only her blue eyes spoke of what she truly felt. Even then, she held onto her round golden shield and stood unmoving in her place. Her mother, on the other hand, was not as much in control of her emotions as she was. Hippolyta's beautiful face was twisted by a dark expression filled with hatred. In the Amazon Queen's right hand was Diana's god-slaying sword, its sharp blade dripping with fresh blood. In her other hand, the queen was holding onto the severed head of an old man with long curly hair and a bushy white beard. The life in the severed head seemed to have not completely vanished yet, as the old man's eyes still held some traces of lightning on them and his mouth was opened as he was trying to form words. However, no sound came through his bloodied lips. Hippolyta watched unblinkingly how life slowly seeped out of the man's head, how his lips stopped moving and how all the arcs of lightning in his eyes slowly faded away. After almost 10 years of continuously searching for him, the information brokers had finally found the former king of Olympus. And now, there he was, dead, beheaded, finally paying for his numerous crimes. If Naruto had not been a god already, he would not have passed on the opportunity of taking Zeus's life with his own 2 hands. However, as a result of Kurama infusing his divinity into him before the final battle against Darkseid a decade ago, Naruto soon ascended to godhood too. Therefore, he decided to leave the killing of the god of thunder to his mother-in-law. Hell hath no fury as a woman scorned and Hippolyta scorned had been. Although several thousand years had passed since the king of Olympus forced himself on her, Hippolyta had never forgotten nor had she forgiven him. Mother, that's enough, Diana approached Hippolyta and said as she put a hand on her shoulder, squeezing it lightly. She took the severed head out of her mother's hand and a silvery flame burst from her palm, reducing it to ashes. The queen nodded to her daughter and then turned towards Naruto and said, "Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Naruto. He deserved this and much more. It's only fitting that he met his end at your hands." Diana strapped her shield on her back and then she took the god-slaying sword from her mother's hands. Flicking it a few times powerfully to remove the blood from its blade, she sheathed it on her back as well. "Come, mother, let's go home," she said. "How long are you going to stick around this time?" "Thea misses her grandma a lot," Naruto said. A smile appeared on Hippolyta's face at the mention of her granddaughter. "What if my answer was forever?" Diana's eyes widened at her words and she quickly took her hands in hers. "Mother, are you serious?" Hippolyta smiled warmly at her reaction. "I've been the leader of the Amazons for over 5,000 years. I think it's time for someone else to take on this responsibility now. This is great. I can't wait to see Thea's face when she hears you're going to stay with us from now on," Naruto said, not any less enthusiastic than Diana. "Who did you leave in charge?" Diana asked, curious about the situation of the Amazons in the other dimension. "Artemis. She's always wanted to lead the Amazons. But she respected me too much to ever try to take my position by force." You're right. I think she will be great for that role." The three of them started walking slowly towards their spaceship as they chatted about various matters and their future arrangements now that Hippolyta was no longer going to return to the Amazons dimension. While Kurama could always open a portal anywhere for them, Naruto and Diana found out that they still loved traveling by spaceship once in a while when they went on a job. It was mostly out of nostalgia. Traveling by spaceship held a special place in their heart because they had spent the first few years of their relationship living like that. Furthermore, it was also a chance for them to spend some intimate time as a couple, not anxious about their daughter's super hearing catching wind of their activities. "Daddy!" Athena yelled in glee and flew right into her father's wide-open arms, nearly taking his breath out with her hug. "She's always going to be Daddy's girl, isn't she?" Hippolyta said and laughed softly from the side. Diana pretended to be annoyed. "That's because he always lets her do anything she wants. She has him at her beck and call. If it wasn't for me to keep the two of them in line." It was as she said. Naruto could hardly ever refuse anything his little angel asked. Therefore, the role of the authoritative figure fell onto Diana's shoulders. But she did not blame her husband in the least. She understood where he was coming from. As an orphan and an outcast whose dream had always been to have a family, and as someone who had suffered through the torment of a 10-year-long illusion by the Black Mercy, Naruto treasured his daughter like the light of his eyes. "Have you been good? Did you listen to your uncle? Did you do your homework?" he asked while tenderly cupping her face and caressing her cheeks. The young girl leaned into his caresses like a spoiled little kitten, delighted at his attention. She had been away from her parents for only 3 days but, as any other kid of her age, she deeply missed her parents despite that only such a little time had passed. Naruto himself was inwardly cooing at how adorable she was. Not a day passed without marveling at the fact that he had a daughter. "My daughter. My dear Athena. My cute little Thea." Long, ruler-straight black hair that reached her waist, a pair of big, innocent blue eyes, pearly white teeth, and 3 pairs of whisker-like birthmarks on her tender cheeks. She was like a miniature carbon copy of her mother except with 3 cute pairs of whiskers. She had inherited her mother's intelligence as well, but the personality was that of her father. Always filled with energy, always annoying someone until they gave her their undivided attention, and always in the mood for pulling a prank if the opportunity appeared. The Thea of Black Mercy's dream world did not come close to how his real daughter turned out to be. In his eyes, she was perfect. Naruto fell a step behind everyone as he watched them enter the house. Little Athena was now in her grandmother's arms, who was cooing at her in a manner that would make the Amazons rub at their eyes if they could see the way their normally stern and no-nonsense queen was acting then. Meanwhile, Diana was talking to Kurama about whether Thea had been obedient while they had been away. It felt so domestic. So peaceful. Almost hard to believe something this good was real. "Diana, Thea, Kurama, mother-in-law? This is my family." A soft, content smile appeared on his face. If someone asked Naruto at that moment who was the happiest man in the world, he would instantly answer, "Me." Side story, Part 1. A young teenage girl was walking around aimlessly in the garden of her family home. Though using the word garden was a bit of an understatement given its sheer size, it covered an area of a dozen hectares, it wouldn't be wrong to call it a private forest instead. After a while, the girl stopped and suddenly kicked one of the nearby trees in frustration. In a show of brute strength completely unexpected from someone who looked as delicate and pretty as her, a shockwave burst from the impact. The branches of several dozen trees were pulverized and their thick trunks were broken and flattened to the ground. When a sharp barking sound came from her side, the girl turned to look at the pure white fox cub next to her. I know, I'm sorry, okay," the girl said as if she could understand what the little fox was trying to tell her. "I'm just so bored," she said and threw her hands up in frustration. "Nothing ever happens in this country. No, on this planet. Nothing ever happens anywhere. Due to her Uncle Kurama's omniscience through karma, no evil deed ever went unpunished. It was a utopia for the average people living there, but for someone with a desire to prove themselves and with more energy than they knew what to do with it, it was the worst. The tiny white fox flicked her two tails and snorted at her before turning its head the other way. Ah, come on, you know that Dad will make the trees grow back in a second. What's the big deal? Not waiting for an answer from the little fox, the girl started walking ahead and began talking to herself. I can't go to school, I can't spend time with my friends anymore, and Mom and Dad won't take me with them to bounties because I'm too young. Ugh. What am I supposed to do here? Having reached the age of 13, Athena Uzumaki could not hide her divine origins from her classmates anymore. With her appearance gradually becoming nearly identical to that of her mother, and with the 3 pairs of whisker-like birthmarks on her cheeks betraying who her father was, as she grew up, her teachers and classmates eventually caught on to what her real identity was. After all, there were giant and life-size statues of Naruto and Diana all over the capital of planet Karna, the great Naruto city. The residents of the city were deeply familiar with the appearance of the gods that made up God Kurama's family. Little Thea got the shock of her life when she went to school a few weeks ago and found hundreds of students and teachers welcoming her on their knees. For the first time in her life, she was starting to dislike the fact that she was a goddess, that she was not normal. She wanted friends, not slaves that worshipped her. She wanted people to appreciate her for who she was, not just for being God Naruto's daughter or God Kurama's niece. When the tiny white fox yipped something at her, Athena crossed her arms stubbornly and said, "I won't use a henge. Why should I hide the beautiful face that I got from my mother? HMPF. But then, she blew out another sigh and sat down on the grass-covered ground under the shade of a tree. When the two-tailed fox cub walked with her tiny limbs in her lap, Athena found herself smiling at how adorable she was. She took her in her arms and embraced her dearly to her chest. As the fox cub started purring like a little engine from her caresses, Thea said, "I want to go with Mom and Dad in space. I want to see the black hole that made Dad immortal. I want to see the Earth where Mom and Dad met for the first time. I want to fight together with them and beat up bad guys. I want to be a famous bounty hunter like them." Naruto and Diana often told their daughter many stories from their adventures across the universe. Little Thea had grown up fantasizing about going on an adventure in space and becoming a mercenary just like her parents. Grabbing the cute fox with her hands and raising her in the air above her, Athena declared, "And then I'll get my own bounty hunter name too. Can you imagine it? Athena Uzumaki, the Berserk Princess. No, how about this, Athena Uzumaki, the Battle Angel?" The more she was speaking, the more excited she became, or even better, Athena Uzumaki, the Goddess of Slaughter. Yeah, I love the sound of that. Ha. She could already imagine herself wielding her mother's god-slaying sword and her Aegis shield, launching herself at a horde of Gordanians and mowing them down like cutting grass. Spewing a sea of fire over their warships and rampaging like a juggernaut, an unstoppable force to destroy all evil. Unable to hold in her rising excitement, she jumped up to her feet and pumped her fist in the air. "Ah! I'm going to be so awesome, just you wait. I'm going to be just like Mom and Dad." The little fox somehow managed to free herself from Athena's grasp and ruffled the girl's silky raven hair as landed on top of her head. "Q," the fox let out a few yips, only for the girl to retort vehemently. "You wish. My daddy is way cooler than yours." Q. So what if your dad is an emperor? My dad is the best bounty hunter in the whole world. The two-tailed fox snickered at her. Har, you just don't get it. You're too little to understand how great Mom and Dad are. They're the most famous mercenary in the known universe. Q. No way. Athena shouted. Whatever the little fox told her must have really offended her. Uncle Kurama is strong, but my dad is way stronger. My dad could beat your dad. Q. Yes, he would. Q. Eventually, their argument went beyond just heated words. No different from how Naruto and Kurama used to brawl back in the day, their daughters, Athena and Miyuki, jumped at each other in a mess of limbs, clobbering each other with their punches, tails, and kicks. Half an hour later, mounted on a horse-sized two-tailed white fox's back, Thea caught her neck in a triangle choke and was squeezing her tight. Not one to be outdone, Miyuki also wrapped her two tails around the girl's neck to submit her. "Yield!" Athena shouted and further tightened her squeeze. A few seconds passed before the white fox released her tail's hold on Athena's neck and let out a sad "Q" sound. Out of breath but her face rosy with excitement from the violent brawl she had just won, Athena sat down on the ground, sprawled on her back and breathing heavily. "You're so much stronger than last month. You almost had me at the end," she said in encouragement to the fox, who had now returned to the size of a tiny cub and curled up into the crook of her neck. "Q." Miyuki barked happily and licked Thea's cheek a few times. There were no hard feelings between them. Brawling like that was nothing unusual for them. The tomboyish little goddess desperately needed an outlet for her endless reserves of energy, and the rambunctious baby fox wanted to let out her innate desire to battle and violence somehow too. It was win-win for both of them, though the little fox really wished she could win more often than in the present. Ever since Thea stopped going to school, time began to pass at a snail's pace. Nowadays, she was being homeschooled with private tutors, but every time her parents went out on one of their usual bounties, she felt like walking on the walls out of boredom. Not today though. Dressed in a set of armor that looked like a miniature version of her mother's, golden greaves, golden pauldrons, white skirts, and a white combat tunic with a golden owl motif on the chest, and with a round golden shield and a silvery sword fitting her size strapped at her back, Athena Uzumaki looked like a girl who was on a mission. Even in spite of her stature, she was just a 13-year-old girl. She would still look like a valiant warrior, if it wasn't for the ball of fluff and fur sitting on top of her head. "Ready?" Athena asked in a whisper. "Kyo!" Miyuki yipped excitedly. "Once I cast the jutsu, you can't move, okay?" Taking Miyuki's happy little bark as her agreement, Thea put her hands in a tiger seal and became still. A few seconds later, the girl and the little fox both became transparent, almost invisible. Befitting mercenaries of their strength, fame, and wealth, Naruto and Diana Uzumaki had more than one spaceship these days. Aside from the ship they were using in the present, a hangar at the outskirts of Great Naruto City, planet Karna's capital, held 5 more spaceships of various sizes and specs. Fully confident in his expertise with seals and his wife's proficiency with divine spells, Naruto didn't hire any people to keep a watch on the hangar. Realistically, nobody except for him and his family would be able to set foot in that place as long as the defenses were up. Although she knew there was not a living being in sight, Thea was flying at a slow speed as she maintained her invisibility technique. At the quiet yip from the little fox sitting on her head, the girl bit her lower lip anxiously. "I don't know, I also think it's too easy. Surely, they must have put some protections to stop me if I ever wanted to sneak out, no. But, so far, there had been no alarms, no barriers, nothing." It was almost as if her parents didn't even consider the fact that their daughter might be trying one day to steal one of their ships and go out on her own adventure. That thought made little Thea pause in her flight and she looked down guiltily. "I didn't know they trusted me so much." Yet there she was, about to break their trust and make them sick with worry. "Miyuki-chan, maybe we shouldn't do this?" Thea asked the little fox in a whisper. But the white fox cub didn't seem to have any second thoughts like her, and she made it clear with her yips. "I know it was my idea, but..." Thea said, still hesitating. But when the little fox jumped off her head and ran by herself to one of the ships, Thea found herself following her. It looked like it wasn't just her who had been bored to death lately. Miyuki seemed just as eager as her to go on an adventure too. But the moment the trapdoor of the ship opened and she found herself face to face with the sleek interior of the gorgeous ship, little Athena forgot all about her guilt. The girl was a space geek. Her parents had taken her on training flights before and even allowed her to pilot a few times under their supervision, but now she was all alone. She could go anywhere. She could fly however she wanted, with as much speed as wanted. "Where should we go first?" Thea asked, her voice giddy with excitement as her fingers blurred over the keyboard of the computer on board. "Q. Q," little Miyuki also barked excitedly. "Eh? Debstum? Are you crazy?" "Q. TL, what, you scared?" "But of course that I am scared. We're already going to be in big trouble when they catch us, but if they also find we went to Debstum? Mom is gonna kill me. No, she's gonna kill us both." Though a vein started pulsing on her forehead, little Athena did her best to ignore Miyuki's mocking sniggers and accessed the interstellar map. "How about Genesis Stadium? It's where Mom and Dad had their first date ever." Q. 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 TL, boring. "How about Earth? Let's mess with Superwoman and the rest of the heroes." At her answer, Athena palmed her forehead. Debstum was known as a rather dangerous sector of the universe because of the yellow lanterns that were often active there, and Earth was not welcoming towards aliens either in the last few years. Under the leadership of Superwoman, the reformed Justice League ruled the entire planet with an iron fist. Thea recalled what she often heard her parents say about Miyuki: she really is her father's daughter. The little fox's desire for violence and thirst for battle seemed impossible to quench. But when Athena palmed her forehead in exasperation, little Miyuki suddenly jumped on the board of the ship and quickly typed in the name, Debstum. "Wait! Stop!" Thea yelled and grabbed the fox by her 2 tails and threw her away before she had the chance to confirm the destination and trigger the wormhole. She quickly deleted the coordinates introduced by Miyuki, but she unexpectedly found herself pressed flat against the board when a huge fox slammed into her from behind. Ah, that's it. I'm kicking your ass big time, the tomboyish little goddess said in irritation and jumped on the fox in retaliation. Miyuki was in the middle of chomping on Athena's right forearm and the little girl was in the midst of punching the fox in the ribs with her left hand when they suddenly heard a peculiar noise. Momentarily, the fox and the girl froze in a posture that wouldn't look out of place in a Renaissance-era painting. That's because the sound that they had just heard was the one that the AI of the computer on board made after the coordinates of the new destination had been set. Q. TL, fuck. Shit. The two of them swore at the same time and immediately disentangled from each other and rushed to the computer. No. No. Ah, what did you do? Athena said in a panic when she realized it was too late to stop the activation of the wormhole. Q. TL, it wasn't me. You pushed me against the keyboard. Her parents had repeatedly warned Thea about the dangers of using a wormhole and they had not allowed her to pilot the ship through one either before, not even for training. The universe was vast beyond comprehension and if an accident happened when traveling through a wormhole, one could be lost for eternity. Athena didn't know for how long they had been traveling through the impromptu wormhole but the entire time, she had been on the verge of crying and biting her nails in anxiety. The little fox was subdued and well-behaved too, not making a sound. When the spectacle of gray, black, and white colors in front of them suddenly turned into a pale violet, almost pink color, the girl and the fox's eyes snapped towards the front window. All they could see was an expanse of dark green and gray rocks below and a pale violet, cloudless sky. They didn't have any time to study their surroundings though because as soon as the spaceship exited the wormhole, a deafening alarm started blasting from the speakers and all sorts of notifications written in red popped up on the large screen of the computer on board. This is bad. Athena said and grabbed the steering wheel with one hand and pulled a lever with the other hand, releasing a blast from the ion engines, intent on propelling the ship upwards. But then, a sound like something snapping was heard and the entire spaceship creaked dangerously. There was a good reason why wormholes were always opened outside the atmosphere of the planets, in space. The sudden transition from the state of weightlessness in space to the gravitational pull of a planet and suffering the full brunt of the change in the atmospheric pressure severely destabilized the ship. Not knowing what to do, Athena and Miyuki could only hug each other and yell in panic as the ship spiraled out of control, falling headfirst towards the ground. Naruto, I'm going to be frank with you. The world will come to an end if either one of us dies, Sasuke told Naruto who was distracted over the safety of Kakashi and Sakura who were barely hanging on. You need to understand. In this situation, your life and mine are far more important than theirs. Focus. Don't be distracted. Naruto looked at him angrily but he couldn't find a retort right away. Even he understood how dire their situation was. The entire world had been placed under a genjutsu, and the four of them were the only ones still awake. Kakashi and Sakura were having a hard time just surviving while he and Sasuke were severely outclassed by their enemy. A sea of lava below, a jagged rock ceiling above. A frozen world where one would be turned into an ice statue in a few moments lest they protected themselves with chakra. A world with a gravity many times higher than that of their planet, to the point where they could not even stand. And the rabbit goddess who could switch between dimensions and control the environment at will. Even with the powers they had been granted by the Sage of the Six Paths, Naruto and Sasuke were mostly on the back foot, only just managing to stay alive under Kagaya's onslaught of attacks. Sasuke! Protect Kakashi and Sakura with your visual prowess. Naruto insisted and yelled when he saw Kagaya's hair enlarging to enormous proportions, seeking to entrap everyone. That moment of distraction, however, had been his undoing. Before he could react, a dark portal was ripped in the air behind him and a pale white hand grabbed him by the collar of his flaming trenchcoat, pulling him inside. This is the worst. Sasuke ground his teeth and bit out a curse. Damn it. They had been separated and Obito was already dead now. He couldn't think of any way to get back to Naruto. Furthermore, he was also stuck with protecting Kakashi and Sakura who seemed unable to contribute anything to this fight because the rabbit goddess was simply out of their league. A few moments later, Kagaya reappeared from a dark portal and Sasuke's face morphed into an expression of anger and despair. That idiot. I warned him. I told him not to get distracted. Despite the feeling of helplessness that threatened to engulf him, Sasuke stood his ground. Encased in his enormous Susanoo, he prepared himself for what was most likely going to be his last stand. It was not that he had no regrets, oh, there were so many of them. He had not managed to achieve his dream of rebuilding his clan and he could not reform Konoha and bring an era of peace either. However, as far as I'm concerned, there are far worse ways to die than by the hands of a goddess, he unknowingly muttered out loud. Kakashi and Sakura who were inside the Susanoo with him gasped at his words. Sasuke-kun, it's not over yet. "We can dash," Sakura began to say, but Sasuke didn't even spare her a glance. Two enormous swords appeared in the hands of his Susanoo. Resolved to fight until his last breath, Sasuke was about to lunge at the rabbit goddess with all his might when a gray and white circular portal, different from those created by Kaguya, suddenly ripped the violet skies above the gravity world open and a large metallic object came out of it, falling towards the ground like a meteorite. Side Story, Part 2. Resolved to fight until his last breath, Sasuke lunged at the rabbit goddess with all his might when a gray and white circular portal, different from those created by Kaguya, suddenly ripped the violet skies above the gravity world open and a large metallic object came out of it, falling towards the ground like a meteorite. With his enhanced eyesight, Sasuke could see that the metallic object wasn't natural. It appeared to be man-made, a vehicle of sorts. But even after that object caught on fire from the friction with the atmosphere, he did not pay it any mind. He quickly turned his attention back to Kaguya who, much to his surprise, had activated her Byakugan and started watching the falling object as if transfixed, seemingly ignoring his presence. "This is my chance," Sasuke thought. But right when lightning engulfed his right hand and he was about to strike her down, Kaguya raised her hand and aimed in his direction without even turning her head. With Byakugan's 360-degree sight, she could see his every move even while paying attention to the flaming object in the sky. Sasuke's only option was to dodge to the side as fast as he could to avoid the deadly bone projectile shot from her palm. "Ow, ow!" Thea whined as she crawled out of the burning wreck that her spaceship had become. Although she had crashed from such a high altitude, other than a comically large bruise on her forehead, there were no other injuries. Despite that she looked like a young teenage girl, she was still a goddess. Her toughness was far beyond that of regular people. The white baby fox was not as lucky or as durable as her though. Miyuki had fainted from the crash. Flying away from the burning wreckage with the little fox in her arms, Athena was occupied with thoughts of dread at the idea of facing her parents. "I'm dead. Mom is going to go apeshit. I'm so dead. And Dad." She could vividly remember what happened the last time her parents got truly angry at her. She had beaten up some bullies at school and had almost killed them by accident due to not controlling her great strength. Her mother's punishment made her shiver just thinking about it. She reckoned that her left buttock had never been the same after that. But what had hurt her even more than the ass-whooping she got from her mother was seeing her father's disappointment. For weeks after that incident, she had done everything in her power to make her father smile at her again. So consumed she was by her thoughts that she almost didn't notice that she wasn't alone on the strange planet that she had crashed onto, until a pitch-black portal appeared in the sky not far from her and a strange-looking woman came out of it. Her white hair was even longer than she was tall, 2 white horns grew out of her forehead, her skin was deathly pale and her eyes looked as if she was blind, with no pupils in them. A pit appeared in little Athena's stomach and she subconsciously stepped back when her senses finally registered the enormous amount of chakra contained in that woman's body. Lightly throwing the unconscious fox up in the air to free her arms, Thea instantly went through the hand seals necessary for casting the Kage Bunshin technique. 2 shadow clones popped up next to her and, before the fox had yet to fall down, one of the clones snatched her from midair and flew away to safety at a speed that nearly broke the sound barrier. The other shadow clone brought her hands on top of the original Thea's and a golden sphere of chakra appeared in her palm. "Who are you, child?" Kaguya asked and the veins around her eyes bulged as she activated her Byakugan once more to study the girl's chakra in detail. "Don't come any closer." Thea shouted threateningly and the golden ball of chakra in her hand suddenly grew as big as a basketball. It was her father's technique Udama Rasengan. Kaguya seemed not to hear her warning because she flew right at her and raised her hand to grab her. However, in the next moment, Athena pushed the big Rasengan in her hand straight into Kaguya's chest. What happened next shocked everyone present at the scene, whether it was Kaguya and Black Zetsu themselves or Sasuke and his group who had been spectating from the side. Instead of Kaguya easily absorbing her ninjutsu as she had done every time before that, the golden Rasengan slammed into her chest unhindered and blasted her away like a cannonball. Sasuke couldn't believe his eyes. How the hell did her ninjutsu work on Kaguya? His eyes narrowed when he thought about the technique that she had cast. Also, no matter how I look at it, that was Naruto's Rasengan. On top of it all, the little girl also had 3 pairs of whisker-like birthmarks on her cheeks, just like Naruto. Are they related somehow? Or is she the daughter of another Jinchuriki? But how is she not affected by the infinite Tsukuyomi? How did she use that space-time technique to reach their current dimension? Why couldn't Kaguya absorb her Rasengan? How did she even learn that technique in the first place? There were so many questions on his mind, he didn't even know where to start and his companions, Kakashi and Sakura, were burning with curiosity just like him too. At first, little Thea didn't recognize the woman in front of her, but she acted upon her instincts and attacked her before the Kaguya could get her claws on her. However, when she saw a gigantic construct of purple energy resembling a mythical winged samurai and the three people standing inside the gem on its forehead, realization finally dawned on her, and she became mute with surprise. Naruto had told his daughter many stories about his adventures, or misadventures, and he had told her about his childhood and the elemental nations too. While other kids went to sleep listening to stories about princesses and white knights, Thea went to sleep while listening to stories of Naruto's adventures as a shinobi or Diana's fights against Earth supervillains and the like. And for the girl to better visualize their stories, her parents often used a henge to show her exactly what some of the important characters in their stories looked like. She didn't recognize the rabbit goddess at first because she did not appear in those stories often, but when her eyes fell on Uchiha Sasuke, Hatake Kakashi, and Haruno Sakura, everything became clear in her head. Somehow, she ended up in the elemental nations. Following that, she recognized the identity of the horned woman that she had just sent flying, which in turn also made her realize the present situation. She had arrived during the last war of her father's homeworld, the Fourth Shinobi War. As Team 7's remaining members approached her, little Athena asked them before they had the chance to say anything. "Are you Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura?" She wanted to double-check and make sure she wasn't mistaken about their identities. If the three of them were surprised before, it was nothing compared to now, when they heard the girl saying their names. Not one to care about tact or good manners in the present situation, Sasuke asked, his eyes narrowing at her. "Who the hell are you? How do you know our names? Are you, by chance, related to Naruto?" Thea didn't have time to answer him because all of a sudden, all four of them fell from the sky as gravity increased many times over. Sasuke could not keep up his Susanoo and the three of them collapsed on their hands and knees, unable to stand. "Not this again," Sakura bemoaned. The last time Kaguya manipulated gravity, she killed Obito, with the rest of them only surviving thanks to his sacrifice. While Sasuke, Kakashi, and Sakura were struggling to not get flattened under the insane gravity, Kaguya raised her hands, albeit with difficulty, and aimed at them. At the sight of the two ashen bone spikes coming out of her palms, their faces became pale. "Is this the end?" they thought. Kakashi struggled with all his might to stand again and jump in front of Sasuke to protect him with his body. However, he couldn't pull off that miracle a second time. Realistically, it didn't make sense that he and Obito had been able to stand the previous time while Sasuke and Naruto hadn't been able to move an inch. It was while they were on the edge of despair that the sound of a sword leaving its sheath was heard, followed by a loud whooshing sound. Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura watched wide-eyed as the young teen girl stood up seemingly effortlessly and quickly jumped up in front of Kakashi. With the sword she wielded in her right hand, she slashed sharply at the bone stake that was about to impale him, and with her left hand, she threw her round golden shield like a frisbee in the trajectory of the bone spike that was about to kill Sasuke. The bone projectiles that they had dreaded until then were smashed into pieces like rotten wood when they collided against the girl's sword and shield. It wasn't only the three of them who could hardly believe their eyes, Kaguya and Black Zetsu were just as startled too. What none of them knew, however, was that little Athena's golden shield and silvery sword were made from the same metal as her mother's weapons and bracelets, from Amazonium. It was a metal that could tank and deflect even the god of evil's Omega beams, to speak nothing of lesser attacks such as Kaguya's dead bone pulse projectiles. As their battle entered a momentary lull, Thea took the chance to speak with the people behind them. "I don't know how I got on this planet or at this point in time. It doesn't make any sense to me. But I know that if we don't fight together, we're all going to die." Naruto and especially Diana had trained their daughter to the bone whenever they were not away on bounties and she was not busy with schoolwork. On one hand, they wanted Thea to fully grasp the extent of her powers and understand how dangerous she could be for regular people, and on the other hand, they also wanted their daughter to have the strength to protect herself and the ones around her. That said, while Thea was no stranger to fighting, never before had she faced a perilous situation. She had never been in a life-and-death battle, and she had definitely never fought for real against a deity. Her mouth was dry, her pulse was erratic and her hands were clammy from nervousness, but she tried to not let it show on her face. Her parents had drilled into her the concept of never revealing any sort of weaknesses in front of the enemy. Even while she didn't take her eyes off the horned woman in the distance, Thea muttered a prayer to the goddess of heroes, courage, and strength, to Diana of Themyscira, to her own mother. "Mother, give me strength." Thea's blue eyes were lit with a golden hue and all hesitation and fear disappeared from her heart. "Tate," the girl shouted, and the golden shield that she had thrown away before suddenly dislodged itself from the ground and flew straight to her left forearm. Smashing her sword against her shield 2 times to psyche herself up, little Athena let out a battle cry and charged. "Mother!" Dodge it, Foz dash. Black Zetsu shouted urgently when he saw how a massive crater was blasted into the rock-hard ground under the girl's feet as she launched herself at them. But he couldn't even finish his sentence before Thea was upon them. A deafening shockwave exploded when the girl smashed her shield into Kagaya's chest and hurled her into the distance like a rocket, her body leaving sonic booms in its wake. Spittle and blood burst from the rabbit goddess's mouth when she crashed into a rocky mountain, the impact reducing the impressive landform into a pile of debris. Mother! Black Zetsu cried out in panic and glared hatefully at the girl who was now flying towards them with her sword raised above her head to finish them. The moment that Thea's shield bash knocked Kagaya back and she lost control of her gravity technique, Sasuke did not hesitate to leave Kakashi and Sakura behind and shunshined ahead, intent on capitalizing on the opening that the little girl had made for him. He didn't know how in the world was it possible for a girl that young to have such monstrous physical strength, and he had many other questions related to her identity, but those would have to wait until after they finished dealing with the mad goddess. With the strange little girl about to cut her down with her sword and with Indra's reincarnation about to stab her with his black lightning-coated hand, Kagaya could only resort to using her area of effect spacetime technique to escape. However, betraying the rabbit goddess's expectations, little Athena did not appear to be flustered at the sight of the underground cave filled with magma. Her chest filled with her mother's courage, Thea was relentless in her pursuit. A moan of pain came from Kagaya as Thea cut her right arm off from the shoulder. The little girl slashed again with her silvery god-slaying sword to deal the finishing blow, but she suddenly felt someone grab her by the shoulder and throw her roughly to the side. And it was not a moment too late. A deadly stream of magma exploded out like a geyser in the spot where she had been before. Don't be reckless, Sasuke warned her. You can't afford to go wild against Kagaya. One wrong move and you die. Yes. Thank you, Athena said and nodded obediently. She was still lacking when it came to real battle experience, so she listened to his words and backed away. But the stream of magma that came to attack Thea wasn't the only one. Kakashi and Sakura also found themselves on the receiving end of the goddess's indiscriminate magma attacks. Forget about them, Sasuke yelled when he saw Athena rushing at Sakura to save her from the tough spot she was in. Shit, he cussed. At this rate, she's going to end up just like Naruto, he said in annoyance. His prediction proved to be right a second later, seeing as, while Thea was distracted with saving Sakura from falling to death into the lake of magma below, a tiny portal opened in her blind spot and an ashen bone spike flew out of it, stabbing deeply into the back of her little shoulder. Thea all of a sudden felt most of her strength leave her body and she lost control over her flight too. Nevertheless, despite her injured shoulder and abruptly losing all feeling in the left side of her body, little Athena did not let go of Sakura's waist, gripping her so tight that the pink-haired girl winced in pain. What a grunt of exertion, Athena mustered all her remaining strength to stab her sword into the wall of the cave, stopping their fall only a few dozen feet above the sea of fire below. Now, mother. Now it's our chance. Kill her. Black Zetsu hollered and Kagaya heeded his words. Watching the rabbit goddess disappear into a black portal, little Thea realized the gravity of her predicament. She's going to kill me. She couldn't feel the left side of her body due to the ashen bone spike that had lodged itself and crumbled into her shoulder, and she had lost control over her flight and other powers too. Half paralyzed, barely hanging onto her sword at only a few dozen feet above a lake of magma and with a murderous goddess about to kill her at any moment, Athena Uzumaki did exactly what any other girl her age would do after getting in big trouble. She cried for her parents. Daddy! Help! At her cries, an explosion of blinding silvery and blue lights filled the cave. While everyone was struggling to regain their eyesight, a rough voice filled with anger reverberated in the underground world. You dare lay a hand on my daughter? For the first time since becoming a goddess, Kagaya felt fear. Side Story, Part 3. When are we going to take Thea on her first mission? Naruto asked while taking cover behind a building as the enemy squad they were pursuing fired their ray guns at him crazily. Next to him, Wonder Woman raised her round shield as she prepared to come out from behind the cover and charge at them. We've had this discussion before. I know you grew up as a child soldier, but I'd rather not have our daughter fight and kill people when she is that young. She's only 13. Unexpectedly, while Naruto was the one who always doted on their daughter and spoiled her rotten, it was Diana, who usually played the role of the authoritative and strict parent, who couldn't bear the thought of Thea going on life-threatening missions and filling her days with fights and violence. Thea got your brains, but she takes after me in terms of personality. I'm telling you, she's going to get herself into big trouble very soon because ever since she stopped going to school, she's been antsy and bored. A bored Uzumaki is the last thing you want. Diana's sigh of exasperation made him chuckle. What did I ever do to get stuck with two troublemakers like you? A laser cannon suddenly evaporated a huge chunk of the wall of the building behind which they were hiding, and Diana had to jump on Naruto with her shield to protect him from the incoming fire. But then, she let out a squawk of surprise and yelled at him. "What are you doing? Are you crazy? Focus, you pervert," Diana said, the red color of her cheeks showing how embarrassed she was. When she jumped on him to protect him from the incoming laser beams, as they rolled onto the ground, she ended up straddling him, and Naruto didn't miss the chance to bury his face into her cleavage. He groaned as he stood up and said, "Can I just release the limiters and curb stomp them all now?" "No. We had a deal." Diana shot down his idea right away. "We promised we'd take it easy and enjoy the process, didn't we?" The reality was that after ascending to godhood, the two of them had become too powerful. It was to the point where they couldn't enjoy going to missions because there was no challenge for them anymore. Most opponents would drop dead or unconscious in one hit. Their enemies couldn't hide anywhere either due to Naruto's sensory capabilities, and they couldn't escape by running away either due to Diana's godly speed and her lasso of truth. Slapping to the side cannon projectiles capable of destroying a moon and walking through a hail of laser beams just to watch people's eyes widen in disbelief had been fun for the first few times, but it got old very quickly. Therefore, they decided to seal up a part of their power, to give themselves a handicap. They would limit their strength, durability, speed, and amount of chakra to a bit less than what they used to have even back when they had been mortals. That way, they would need to strategize and actually put in some effort in their missions instead of one-shot killing everything. After all, they weren't going on bounties because they needed money, not when there were billions of people who worshipped them in the Vega system. The two of them going on missions together was for the sake of adventure and having fun. Their purpose was to keep themselves busy and have a good time together. "Ugh, fine," he said and sighed deeply as he watched how their enemies ran to their spaceship and were about to fly away. But before they could take off, he quickly went through a few hand seals and slapped the ground with his palms. "Doton, Earth God's hands." The ground quaked and cracked as two gigantic hands made of rocks and dirt suddenly rose in the air and grabbed onto the enemy spaceship by its wings. In the meantime, Wonder Woman took out a golden bow and a quiver filled with arrows from the storage seal inscribed onto her bracelets of submission. 1 moment later, 4 arrows were fired in quick succession and shot down the engines of the ship, which exploded with a loud bang. Naruto grinned as he watched how Diana unsheathed her sword and flew towards the spaceship menacingly. He would never get tired of watching his badass wife kicking butt. But while he was lost in his own little world admiring her, a snarky voice rang in his mind. "Naruto, that naughty brat of yours broke into your hangar." It was Kurama. The hangar holding all those spaceships wasn't as unprotected and easy to break in as little Athena had thought. The very moment she stepped inside, regardless of the invisibility jutsu that she had cast on herself and Miyuki, the alarm seals were triggered and informed Kurama of her intrusion. "I knew it," was the first thing Naruto said when he heard his words. He had told Diana just a moment ago that aboard Uzumaki was the last thing they'd want. He knew it was only a matter of time before their daughter was going to get herself into trouble. "What is she doing now?" he asked Kurama telepathically. "She took Miyuki with her too, and they're about to board one of your spaceships, the red one," Kurama said, and he could practically hear the exasperation in the fox's voice. "You really ought to discipline her. You don't want her to turn out like that bratty grandson of the third Hokage, do you?" "Hey, what do you mean? Konohamaru was adorable. Before he started following you around and calling you boss, you smacked the shit out of him," Kurama deadpanned, and Naruto chuckled. As he saw Diana flying back with a metallic suitcase in her hands, Naruto told Kurama, "Let her think nobody is watching her. Let her take off with the spaceship. She knows how to pilot it and how to use the AI on board. We've taught her well." In spite of his earlier words, Kurama said in worry, "Are you sure about that? You know better than anyone just how dangerous the outer space can be. There are things out there that could pose a danger even to you and me." "I'm sure," Naruto said. "If she's anything like me, she won't learn her lesson until the consequences of her actions hit her like an anvil in the head." Turning his attention back to Diana, he asked her when she landed next to him, "Is that all?" "Yep. I took care of them," she said. "Don't tell me you killed them." "Of course I didn't," she said, offended. "Our mission was to retrieve what they had stolen, not to take their lives. Besides, they're so pitiful," she said with a shake of her head. She did not say that as a mockery, she truly felt sorry for them. The people she had just beaten up were a squad of Special Forces agents from Planet Ran. The inhabitants of Planet Ran had become infamous in the galaxy recently for having driven themselves to near extinction. A nuclear war amongst themselves left the planet in shambles and rendered most of the remaining population sterile. In the present, they were suffering from famine, no crops could grow in the aftermath of the nuclear war, radiation-induced terminal illnesses, and extremely low natality rates. Scientists predicted that the population of Ran would become extinct within 200 to 300 years if nothing changed. The survivors of the nuclear war were now desperate to fix their situation, and one of the solutions that they had thought of was to steal unprocessed nth metal from Thanagar. The nth metal was a special metal with all sorts of mystical abilities. Aside from its widely known abilities to disrupt magic, give the user the ability of flight, and protect them from all extremes of temperature, depending on the level of symbiosis achieved with the user, the nth metal could even regenerate lost limbs, rejuvenate the body, and extend one's lifespan. The survivors of Ran had tried stealing it for the sake of curing their infertility. Naruto himself had once tried to obtain the nth metal from the Thanagarians, but they refused him. It was one of the most valuable things in the galaxy, and the Thanagarians protected the secret of processing it with their lives. If I hadn't built a reputation as someone who never breaks his word, Thanagar would have never issued this bounty to us, Naruto said. Anyway, remember how I told you Thea would soon get into trouble? That aboard Uzumaki is the last thing we want? What did she do this time? Diana said, with a tone that let him know she was almost afraid to ask. I just got a message from Kurama. Looks like she broke into the hangar and stole one of our spaceships. She also took little Miyuki with her. When Wonder Woman pinched the bridge of her nose, Naruto started chuckling. Let's make a clone, both of us, to send the suitcase to the Thanagar embassy in Karna and collect the bounty. We'll go after Thea straight away. What about these guys? She asked and gestured with her head towards the ruined spaceship and the Ran people lying down all beaten up and with their hands cuffed. We were paid to retrieve the nth metal, not hand the thieves over to the authorities, he said with a shrug. When Naruto and Diana teleported themselves to the Hiratian marker that had been inscribed on the door of the spaceship's bedroom, Thea had already taken off and flown the ship into the outer space near planet Karna. Suddenly the entire ship started shaking and shuddering. I can't believe they're brawling inside the ship of all places. Wonder Woman said, her super hearing having caught the sounds made by the little girl and the white fox fighting. Let's lay low for now. Let's lower our presence and henge into something else to hide, he said. You're not going to stop them? Sometimes, a bad experience can be the best teacher. I say let her get into big trouble and realize how dangerous the universe at large can be. If they get into a life-threatening situation, we'll step in and protect them. Diana looked like she was torn between the desire to protect her sweet daughter and wanting to educate her. Although she was not spoiling Athena as frequently as Naruto, she loved her daughter like the light of her eyes. When the spaceship came out of the impromptu wormhole and Naruto's sensory ability picked up the rabbit goddess's chakra signature, his shock was so great he almost lost control of his henge. No. Freaking way. Was the only thing he could think of. He had scoured the known universe, the 3,600 sectors governed by the Green Lantern Corps, for nearly 100 years looking for a way back to his homeworld. There were hardly any individuals in the whole universe that had traveled the world as much as him. I've visited thousands of planets inhabited by humanoid people, and I've even gone beyond the borders of the known universe more than once. That was how he had discovered the planet he had named Mayaboku, and that was also how he had almost lost his life by going beyond the event horizon of the largest supermassive black hole that he had ever seen. But it had all been in vain. He had not been able to find even one clue about his homeworld. To think that, one day, it would be an accident that brought me back. To think that a brawl between his bratty daughter and his baby niece would be the key to finding a way back to the elemental nations. When the ship finally crashed against the rocky ground, Naruto and Diana dispelled their henges too. But he stopped her from going out. I know you are worried, I am worried too, Naruto said. But they are fine. A crash like this is far from enough to injure them. Let's see what happens now. Mother, give me strength. When Wonder Woman heard her daughter's prayer, it took all her willpower to not swoop in and engulf her little angel in her arms. Taking a look at her husband next to her, she realized that he was just as filled with tension as her. He was looking at his daughter unblinkingly, ready to teleport to his daughter's side in a heartbeat. He had almost lost his cool when little Athena pushed her Udama Rasengan into Kagaya's chest. Diana found herself smiling widely at the way little Thea smashed her sword and shield against each other in a manner reminiscent of how her Amazon sisters used to do before the start of a battle to psyche themselves up. That's my girl. Wonder Woman inwardly cheered when Thea's shield smashed into the horned goddess and sent her flying like a rocket into a mountain, the impact reducing the impressive landform to rubble. But after Kagaya's spacetime technique moved everyone into another dimension once again, and she saw Thea turning her back to Kagaya in order to save the pink-haired girl who was about to fall into the lake of magma below, her heart was caught in her throat. Naruto's back was wet with sweat from how much anxiety was eating at him as he watched his daughter battle the rabbit goddess. That wasn't what he had in mind when he said he wanted to take Thea on a mission. Fighting against a mad goddess was far from the type of opponent he would choose for his daughter to face in her first real battle. His chest swelled with pride at the courage and bravery she showed as she saved Kakashi and Sasuke's lives, and when she cut off Kagaya's arm he almost let out a cheer of excitement. He knew his daughter was strong, she was his and Diana's daughter after all. But he hadn't expected her to fight so well against someone like Kagaya. Alas, getting distracted by the pink-haired girl's perilous situation left Thea open to Kagaya's attack. "Daddy! Help!" Hearing her daughter cry out for his help, a vast amount of energy exploded from his being and his rage shook the cave as he screamed. "You dare lay a hand on my daughter?" A cataclysmic explosion suddenly boomed and the whole world was drowned by a blinding white light. When Kakashi opened his eyes and looked around he could not recognize his surroundings. Did Kagaya teleport us to another dimension again? The underground cave was gone, and the huge lake of magma was nowhere to be seen either. Instead, all he could see were the walls of a crater that at a glance appeared to be several miles in diameter and depth. It was like they were in a gigantic cauldron and he had to strain his neck when he looked up in order to catch a glimpse of the night sky above. Who are you?" Kakashi heard Sakura say with a stutter, and when he turned towards the direction of the voice his eyes widened at the sight of the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. But the tall white-haired woman didn't reply to Sakura's question. Instead, she took the little girl in her arms and embraced her to her bosom lovingly. The words she started speaking were in a language that Kakashi couldn't understand, but even so, just by hearing the tone of her voice, it was obvious that they must have been family. "Mom," little Thea said and broke into tears. She was so happy to see her mother that she wasn't even worried about the punishment she was going to receive after stealing the spaceship and running away from Karna into the outer space. It was the first time she had fought against someone who was trying to kill her, the first time she had been in a life-and-death battle. She had been terrified. "My little sun and stars," Diana said lovingly as she hugged the little girl and caressed the back of her head. "You were so brave, so courageous. Mom is so proud of you." Diana's loving words only made Thea cry harder into her bosom. "Shoo, it's okay," she said and laughed softly as she continued to caress her hair. "Mom and Dad are here with you. Look, your dad is taking care of everything as we speak." As if they had practiced the timing before, at that moment, another explosion of white turned the night into day. When a second explosion illuminated the nightsky, Sasuke involuntarily summoned his Susanoo around himself and Kakashi. The two shinobi watched in stupefaction how the massive, miles-tall walls of the crater they were in were obliterated, reduced to atoms. The landscape they could see around them had all been razed off, everything became a flat and barren wasteland. Much to their surprise, when the blinding light receded, they realized that they weren't dead. Instead, a dome of golden light with the white-haired woman as the center had protected them all. "Sasuke, look up there," Kakashi said and pointed towards the sky. His eye morphing into the pattern of his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Sasuke muttered in disbelief. "Naruto? What did you say?" Kakashi asked as if he couldn't believe his ears. "He looks like Naruto," Sasuke said, not taking his eyes away from him. Kakashi no longer had his jujutsu, but even without it, he could see that the being floating high up in the sky was different. "Are you sure? Naruto's Jinchuriki forms are yellow and red, not white and blue." It made no sense to Sasuke either, just like the sudden appearance of the little girl and the white-haired woman didn't make any sense either. The main way for gods to increase their strength was by harnessing the psychic energy released by the faith of their believers. That was the orthodox path, and it was also the path that Kurama and Diana had taken when they chose their domains. Kurama had become the god of destruction, truth, and justice, while Wonder Woman became the goddess of courage, heroes, and strength. The more that a god or a goddess acted in accordance to their epithets/domains, the more the faith of their believers grew and the more their strength increased as well. However, Naruto had chosen a different path. Before becoming a god, he had been a sage. Instead of choosing a domain to represent and live by, he had sought to deepen his connection with nature instead, to become one with the universe. "Please, spare my life," Kagaya pleaded as she lay unmoving, powerlessly, on the ground. With a simple punch, he had obliterated the immense volcano they had been inside of and pulverized most of her body too. Although her body was slowly regenerating now, even her madness was not enough to let her think she stood any chance whatsoever against the godlike being flying above her. But Naruto didn't give her an answer. Raising his hand, he aimed at the downed rabbit goddess below. "Celestial bomb." As he uttered those words, a bluish-white sphere of cosmic energy appeared in his palm. Then, the world was drowned in a blinding white light a second time that night. When the cosmic energy finally dissipated and the light died down, all landforms for dozens of miles in all directions had been reduced to nothingness. Much to Naruto's surprise, however, the rabbit goddess had somehow managed to stay alive too by covering herself in her Kekii Mora time-space sphere at the very last moment. Although she survived, she appeared to be on her last legs. Not even a technique that could rip dimensions apart had been enough to mitigate all the damage from his cosmic energy bomb. "I'm willing to submit," Kaguya pleaded again. "Spare me if you care about the ones trapped by the God Tree. The more damage you inflict on me, the more chakra I will need to siphon from them to regenerate." "And what if there is nothing left to regenerate?" he said. As his palms came together like in prayer, the aura of white and blue light coming off his body started to expand, and it grew until it filled the skies. It was an illusory construct of light of humongous proportions. It was his celestial avatar. He had only summoned its upper body, but that form was already more than 10 times larger than a perfect Susanoo. A massive gale of wind was stirred as the celestial avatar's hands started moving towards each other, and Kaguya's Byakugan eyes widened in terror. A black rift appeared in the air next to her, but the portal she had tried opening to escape with her Rinna Sharingan was frozen. The amount of cosmic energy contained in the celestial avatar had momentarily frozen the spacetime continuum in the small area between its hands. But just as the celestial avatar was about to annihilate her, Wonder Woman appeared at Naruto's side. "If you keep her alive, you can use her to go back to your homeworld," she reminded him. As powerful as the two of them were, they did not specialize in dimension travel like Kaguya. Their only technique of this kind was the Hierishin, and that could only be used to teleport from one formulae marker to another. They had no way of finding the elemental nations without Kaguya's ability. "My home is on planet Karna with you, our daughter, and Kurama," Naruto said. "I know that, dummy," she said, but, in spite of herself, his words had made her smile. "But your old friends and comrades are down there. They have no way of going back to their homes." Diana's words made his anger subside. In his anger at Kaguya for hurting his daughter, he had momentarily forgotten about Sasuke, Kakashi, and Sakura below. "You're right," he said with a sigh, and his celestial avatar dispersed in an aurora of blue and white lights. The white and blue cloak of cosmic energy faded away too, and he returned to his original appearance. "Follow me and do as I say," he told Kaguya, who couldn't think of doing anything except for obeying his commands at that moment. "Dad!" little Athena shouted in joy when Naruto flew down and she jumped into his arms. Her tears long since forgotten Thea's eyes were filled with worship as she looked at her father. "I always knew you were powerful, but I never knew you were that powerful." Thea had grown up hearing everyone around her sing praises to her parents and to her uncle, talking about powerful and mighty they were, but she had never seen them fight seriously before. Today, she got a glimpse of her dad's true power as a god for the first time. Turning towards the little fox who had now regained consciousness, Thea couldn't help rubbing it in. "See? I told you my dad is the strongest." Miyuki could not find anything to argue against her at that time. Just like Thea, it was the first time she had witnessed the true power of a god. The little fox was overwhelmed too. Naruto grinned as he rubbed Miyuki's head too endearingly. But that sweet family moment was interrupted when the three shinobi came closer to them. "Naruto? Is that really you?" Kakashi asked as he hesitantly took a step forward. From Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke's perspective, Naruto had been whisked away by Kaguya in one of her portals only a few minutes ago. They could hardly believe that the mature man standing in front of them was the same as the hyperactive teenager they used to know. Luckily for them, when Naruto became a celestial sage a few years ago, the last vestiges of Kyuubi's demonic chakra had been purged from his body and he reverted back to his original appearance. Nowadays, his hair was a golden blonde once again, his red eyes became a normal human blue once more, and his thick whisker-like birthmarks thinned down to their initial form. Therefore, while Naruto did look older and more mature than in their memories, he was still easy to recognize. After all, his face was hardly forgettable. "Yo, Kakashi-sensei. Long time no see," Naruto said and smiled. At the deeper but still familiar sound of his voice, Sakura's courage grew and she stepped forth as well. "What happened to you? Why are you so old? Is that one of your stupid henges again? And who are the woman next to you and that little girl? What dash?" More importantly, Sasuke suddenly cut her off. "What was that power you just used? And what happened to Kaguya? How did you get back from whatever dimension she teleported you to?" Side Story, Part 4. "Yo, Kakashi-sensei. Long time no see," Naruto said and smiled. At the deeper but still familiar sound of his voice, Sakura's courage grew and she stepped forth as well. "What happened to you? Why are you so old? Is that one of your stupid henges again? And who is the woman next to you and that little girl? What dash?" More importantly, Sasuke suddenly cut her off. "What was that power you just used? And what happened to Kaguya? How did you get back from whatever dimension she teleported you to? Kaguya won't be a problem anymore, Naruto said and stepped aside to let them see the horned woman who was standing behind him obediently. Turning his attention to her, he ordered, use your dimensional jutsu and send us all back to the elemental nations. As you wish, Kaguya said and bowed, much to Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke's disbelief. In the next moment, the horned goddess's area of effect spacetime technique teleported everyone back to the elemental nations, on the main battlefield of the Fourth Ninja War. By the gods! Wonder Woman said. She had become a goddess herself but, at the sight in front of her eyes, it was the only thing she could utter. The blood-red moon, the enormous tree that reached the skies, the immeasurable roots that spread over the land and the countless people hanging from the aerial roots of the god tree wrapped in wooden cocoons, it was like a scene out of a post-apocalyptic movie, like a nightmare. You know what to do, Naruto said and Kaguya wasted no time in following his command. She understood that her survival depended on it. As her hands came together in a rat seal, the red eye on her forehead closed and the blood moon started losing its color too, turning pale again. But a sudden hail of lightning-coated shuriken forced Kaguya to break her hand seal and use her Rinne Sharingan's ability to blast away the incoming projectiles. What's the meaning of this, Sasuke? Naruto asked, his eyes narrowing at him. I won't let her break the infinite Tsukuyomi. Not before I executed the 5 Kages first, Sasuke said. What are you talking about? Naruto tilted his head at him, genuinely confused. To him, over 100 years passed since he was whisked away from the elemental nations. Momentarily, he couldn't make the connection between the 5 Kage and Sasuke's hatred for them. All the shinobi wars, all the people used as expendable tools for the sake of their villages, the massacre of my clan, and even the way you were turned into a weapon by your own father, all of these are the result of the previous Kage's politics and indoctrination. The Kages of the 5 elemental nations are at fault for this cruel and unforgiving state of our world. When he said those words, it finally clicked for Naruto. Look, I can understand wanting to get rid of the Raikage and Tsuchikage for all the shit they've done over the years, he said, his words shocking both Sakura and Kakashi. Even Sasuke was looking at him wide-eyed, not having expected him to say something like that. However, Naruto continued, why would you want to kill Gaara, Tsunade, or the Mizukage? They've never waged war against others. It's quite the opposite, Gaara and Tsunade had to pick up the pieces and they worked tirelessly to sort out the mess left behind by their predecessors. They had also put their lives on the line for the sake of protecting the innocent when Akatsuki invaded Suna and Konoha. As for the Mizukage, ugh, bear with me, it's been over a century so my memory is a bit foggy, but wasn't she the one who put a stop to the civil war and bloodline massacres in Kiri, or something? Are you messing around with me now? Sasuke yelled at him. Naruto, please don't provoke him. There's no need for you two to fight again now after we've finally managed to end this war, Kakashi also said, trying to defuse the situation before it escalated any further. I'm not messing around though. I'm trying to understand why would he want to kill all the Kage of the 5 elemental nations, he told Kakashi before asking Sasuke, what is it that you are really after, Sasuke? Didn't you already get revenge on Itachi and Danzo? Right now, in my eyes, you look like an angry kid who is just lashing out at the world. What more do you want? Do you want to raise the entirety of Konoha off the dash? But Sasuke suddenly cut his words off as he shouted. Amaterasu! A tear of blood fell down from his right eye and a torrent of pitch-black flames engulfed Naruto's body. In spite of the power Naruto had shown against Kaguya, Sasuke believed that he would not have any way to defend against flames that were hotter than the sun if he was attacked by surprise. I thought you were smarter than this, Sasuke. Between the two of us, I was supposed to be the dumb one, remember? Naruto said as he slapped the Amaterasu flames to the side and extinguished them like the weak flame of a candle flickering in the wind. Sasuke was just about to use his Rinnegan spacetime technique when a terrible pain exploded from his face. After you saw what I did to Kaguya, just what exactly gave you the confidence to attack me? Naruto asked but, at that point, Sasuke could no longer hear him. The last Uchiha couldn't make sense of what had just transpired. One moment he was preparing to cast a Meno to Jikara but a second later, he was embedded several dozen feet deep into the enormous trunk of the god tree, the bones in his entire body seemingly broken, and his limbs paralyzed. The only thing could feel was the taste of blood in his mouth before he lost consciousness. It had taken Naruto one single punch to end their fight and terminate their rivalry. With the interruption out of the way, Kaguya proceeded to undo once again the infinite Tsukuyomi that had been cast over the world. The god tree creaked and dried up, its branches and aerial roots rising enormous clouds of dust as they broke under their weight and crashed on the ground. The wooden cocoons hanging from them shriveled like autumn leaves, and the people trapped within started waking up from their slumber one by one. It was at that moment that the remnant of the Sage of the Six Paths also appeared together with the reanimated Hokages. But Naruto didn't pay the sage and the other Hokage too much importance. Instead, walking past them without as much as a greeting, he went straight to the fourth Hokage, to his father. "Hello, father. So it really was you, Naruto," Minato said, visibly surprised at his older appearance. "Things happened. I'm much older than I look, actually." The conversation stalled for a few moments before he turned to Diana, little Athena and Miyuki, and beckoned them to come next to him. "During the fight with Kaguya, she used her spacetime technique to send me to another world. Although it seems like only a few minutes passed in this world, it took me a very long time before I could find my way back. In the meantime, I got a family and a new home too. Father, this is my wife, Diana, and these are my daughter Athena, and my niece Miyuki, she is Kurama's daughter." "Kurama, you mean the Kyuubi? He had a daughter?" "A pleasure to meet you," Diana said politely and gave him a short bow. As for Thea and Miyuki, they hid behind Diana's back, not talking to Minato. "Come on, Athena, say hi to your grandfather." Diana tried to push her, but Thea evaded her hand and flew away, choosing to go to Kakashi and Sakura's side at the moment instead, with the little fox running after her too. Naruto couldn't blame his daughter and niece for their behavior. He and Kurama had not said any lies when they told their daughters stories about their homeworld, so the two little girls knew what Minato had done to Naruto and Kurama in the past. While Naruto and Diana could keep a polite appearance, Thea and Miyuki were children, so it wasn't easy for them to pretend. "Looks like they don't like me all that much," Minato said and smiled awkwardly. "It's hard to think that you've grown up so much in such a short time, but stranger things had happened before. It warms my heart to see you all grown up, married to a beautiful lady and with a pretty and healthy daughter too." As Minato said those words, his body started glowing and dissipating into small pieces of light. "Looks like my time is up. Please tell Mom that I'm doing okay," Naruto said, and, for the first time since he came back to the elemental nations, his voice betrayed the whirlpool of emotions he felt deep inside. "Tell her that I have a family of my own now, my wife, my daughter, Kurama and his daughter, and my mother-in-law too. Please tell her that I am happy, happier than ever, tell her that I love her." Meeting his father after such a long time reminded Naruto once again of the 10-year-long dream caused by the Black Mercy, of the paradise-like world where his mother was alive, where Jiraiya was alive, and where they all lived as one big, happy family. "I will tell Kushina everything, I promise," Minato said. I hope their grudge towards me will lessen one day." Naruto did not reply, but seeing Thea and Miyuki's behavior and Diana's cold politeness, Minato understood what their opinion of him must have been. "Maybe, one day," Naruto said and briefly turned to look at his daughter, who was proudly showing off her weapons to Kakashi and Miyuki, who was sitting on her shoulder in a manner no different than how Kurama used to sit on his shoulder in the past. Naruto was an adult now, so he understood Minato's position and the responsibility he had carried on his shoulders as the Hokage. He understood why Minato had chosen to turn his son into a weapon. It was the best thing he could have done for Konohagakure. Without a Jinchuriki, the other hidden villages would have seen Konoha as weak and ripe for the taking. As the Hokage, maintaining the peace and prosperity of the village was far more important than the well-being of his family. But at the same time, now that he was a father too, Naruto could simply not understand how Minato was able to sacrifice his family for the sake of the village. He loved his daughter so much that he couldn't even begin to imagine doing something like that to her. He would never put the well-being of others above his family. Despite his mixed feelings towards his father, Naruto stepped closer to him and unexpectedly wrapped his arms around him. "It was good to see you one last time, father. I don't resent you and, as I said, it's been a very, very long time for me. Time heals everything and, in the end, it all turned out well." Knowing that he was a deity now, there was a real chance that he would never get to meet his parents in the afterlife. As a new god, he was immortal, never to die of old age. Therefore, Naruto did not want to part ways with his father for eternity on a cold note. "Thank you, Naruto," was the last thing Minato said, and a tear fell from his eyes before his body disappeared completely in a shower of lights. 2 days later, the Uzumaki family and most of the shinobi and kunoichi from Naruto's generation were all gathered together at a restaurant to hold a minor celebration for surviving the war. Many people had died in the war, and the Shinobi Alliance had already held a ceremony to bury them and honor their sacrifices. However, one had to look with hope at the future and focus on the living. There weren't only young people at the gathering. Apart from them, there were also Tsunade, Kakashi, Irika, Tuchi and his daughter Ayam, and quite a few others. "Oh oi, is that her?" Kiba said in a whisper as he gestured discreetly with his head at a very eye-catching woman standing alone in the corner of the room. Shut up, idiot, she might hear you. Tenten whispered back harshly. What? I didn't say anything bad, he shot back at her in annoyance. Kiba wasn't the only one ogling at Kagaya, many other people in attendance were secretly staring at her. If her inhuman appearance with her deathly pale skin, the closed third eye on her forehead, and the big white horns coming out of her head were not eye-catching enough, the fact that she was the progenitor of chakra and a goddess certainly made her the center of everyone's attention. However, nobody dared to step anywhere close to her. I don't see Sasuke-kun. Anyone knows where he is? Ino suddenly asked. Come to think of it, I don't see Forehead either. How come you haven't heard? Kiba said surprised. He's in the hospital. Rumor goes Naruto and Sasuke fought and it was a one-sided beatdown. I thought it was just a rumor. Did Naruto really get that powerful? Forget about that, why does he suddenly look like he's 10 years older? Choji asked. From what Kakashi-sensei told me, it looks like Kagaya threw him into a dimension where time flowed several dozen times faster than here. Apparently, he's over 100 years old. No way. Kiba, Tenten, and Choji said at the same time in disbelief. It does not make sense to me either, the usually quiet Shino also said, the insects buzzing around him noisily betraying his inner surprise too. He does not look a day over 25. Naruto-kun. Hinata muttered, her eyes pinned on the subject of her affection. But when she saw the white-haired woman peck him playfully on the cheek, she closed her eyes and turned her head to the side. It took all her willpower not to start crying. She had been in love with him ever since she was little and she had hoped that one day, they would be together. However, in the span of a few days, her dream had been destroyed. The person she admired and loved the most was now forever out of her reach. While the survivors of Konoha 11 were gossiping, Naruto, Diana, and Thea were seated together with Tsunade, Kakashi, Shizune, Irika, and Yamato. This is so strange. Only a few days ago you were a rebellious brat who defied my orders and barged into the battlefield, yet now you're all mature and grown up, married, and you've even gotten a daughter. I'm too sober for this conversation. Someone give me some sake. Wonder Woman found herself laughing at the Hokage's antics, she was exactly as Naruto had described her. I guess I can't call you a brat anymore, Tsunade said wistfully. I'm still going to call you Bachan though, Naruto said. Damned brat, Tsunade cussed and downed a shot of sake, making everyone laugh. How did the two of you meet? Shizune asked. Yes, tell us some stories about the other world, Yamato also said. It wasn't just him, everyone was burning with curiosity. Better yet, I could also show you some pictures and short films if you wanted, Naruto said and tapped on his wristwatch a few times and a hologram came out of it. Everyone at the table watched the spectacle of lights with wide eyes, never before having seen anything like it. In no time, their table was crowded from all sides as everyone else in the restaurant rushed curiously to see the appearance of the other world too. That vehicle can really take you in the sky, to the stars? You mean to say there are thousands of other planets with people just like us? Whoa! Everyone was letting out similar questions and exclamations of surprise. Through it all, however, nobody failed to realize that most of the photos and videos that Naruto was showing them were in one way or another related to either his wife, his daughter, or Kyuubi. It spoke volumes of his feelings for them. That evening, after the party ended and everyone went back to their homes, Naruto and Diana took their daughter with them and flew up to the top of the Hokage monument. I used to sit here for hours almost every day, doing nothing but watching over the village at the sunset, Naruto said, touched by the nostalgic sight. It's peaceful. It's beautiful, Diana said and lied with her head on his shoulder. As for Thea, she was flying by herself in front of the Hokage monument, looking curiously at the sculpted faces. Oi! I hope you're not smearing their faces with paint or anything like that. Naruto suddenly yelled and Thea started giggling. Don't worry, Dad, I'm not you, I'd never do anything that childish, Thea said with a smug look on her face. That's true, you're more likely to steal your parents' spaceship, endanger yourself and your cousin, and get into a fight with a mad goddess, Diana said pointedly and the smug look on Thea's face disappeared like a miracle. Did you say something? The wind is blowing quite heavily, I can't hear you, Thea said and flew away quickly before her mother could scold her any further. They both chuckled at her cheeky answer. What are your plans? Wonder Woman asked. How much longer do you want to stay here? A day? A week? Or more? Naruto shook his head. I'd rather not. I want to leave tonight because the time difference between this world and ours is too big. We did leave our clones behind but I'm sure that Grumpy Fox and your mom are going to miss us a lot. Kurama already took little Miyuki away on the first day. Only a few moments after Naruto bid his father goodbye, Miyuki disappeared in a puff of smoke. Due to the time difference between their dimension and the elemental nations, the short period of time it took Naruto to defeat Kagaya and Sasuke and speak to his father had to have been a few years for Kyuubi. Spending such a long time without his daughter must have driven him crazy with worry and longing. What about your friends here? Naruto let out a snort of amusement. I'm an old man, and their kids. He and his former friends did spend some time together, but it quickly became clear that they had almost nothing in common anymore. Even before, we didn't really hang out. We were just comrades that went on missions together, but I was so lonely and desperate for companionship that I mistook that as friendship. But he didn't dwell on his past. Changing the subject, he said. I'm a little surprised though that not even one of them decided to follow me into our dimension, out of curiosity if nothing else. I mean anyone besides Konohamaru. If the young boy respected the hell out of Naruto before, he downright worshipped him now. He volunteered to follow him before Naruto even finished his words. However, Konohamaru's parents wanted to hear nothing about it. Give it a few months, they've just come out of a world war where the fate of the planet was on the line. Many of their friends and relatives lost their lives in battle. They need time to mourn their loved ones, to heal, and to recover, Diana said. You're right, he said, and then he stood up. Are we leaving now? She asked. Yes, but, before that, I need to have a conversation with Kagaya. At the mention of her name, the rabbit goddess suddenly came out of a black portal and bowed before saying, Is there anything I can help you with, Master? Wonder Woman's eyes narrowed at how Kagaya was addressing her husband, but she sighed and decided to let it slide. She knew that Kagaya could hardly be considered sane and that after the beating that Naruto put on her, she looked up at him as if he was her master. Tell me your story. Tell me why you tried to kill everyone. What was your purpose? 2 weeks later. Now back in their home universe, the Uzumaki family were in the middle of an interstellar voyage. Unlike the cheerful mood that was usually present in their family, things were a bit different at that moment. Little Thea was upset at having lost her best friend and playmate, Miyuki. By the time they returned from the elemental nations, Miyuki had already grown old enough for her to have grandkids of her own. Meanwhile, Athena was still only 13 years old. Although 2 weeks passed since their return, Thea was still bummed out about it. But she wasn't the only one not in the best of moods. Naruto also appeared to be melancholic and something seemed to weigh on his mind heavily. Diana, Naruto called out after a while. Yes? I'm wondering, will we one day end up like her too? He asked while gesturing with his head at the rabbit goddess who was looking through the window of the spaceship, staring unblinkingly at the stars and planets in the distance. When they found out the reason for Kagaya's actions, the betrayal of her lover and children and the existence of the Otsutsuki clan, Naruto decided to take her with them. He had given her his word that he would not kill her when she transported them to the elemental nations, but they could not just let a mentally unstable person with as much strength as her unsupervised. Therefore, after leaving 2 of their clones behind to watch over the elemental nations and summon them back in case the thing Kagaya feared ever came true, Naruto and Diana took Kagaya with them when they left. Her lover betrayed her children betrayed her, and the godly power that she achieved overnight negatively influenced her psyche too. On top of that, she also spent over 1,000 years in a prison of rocks, in complete solitude. All things considered, she could have become even worse, Diana said. But to answer your question, no, I don't think we'll ever end up like her. As she said that, she wrapped her hands around him from behind and rested her chin on his shoulder. We have each other, don't we? She said and pressed her cheek against his. We made a vow. We promised we'd be together forever, and forever is a very long time for us. Yes, we did, he said and turned around in her embrace. He cupped her cheeks gently with his hands and kissed her. Although they had been married for 13 years, their love had only grown stronger with time and their passion had yet to fade. Ew, why do you always have to kiss everywhere? Thea said and pretended to throw up, making her parents start laughing at her overdramatic reaction. A few hours later, a huge star-shaped space city appeared in their sight. Hundreds of spaceships were landing on and leaving from its dry docks every minute, and the man-made lights coming from it were making it shine like a miniature sun in the darkness of the space. It was Genesis Stadium. Since Naruto decided to spare Kagaya's life, he saw it as his responsibility to watch over her and maybe rehabilitate her one day. And what better place than Genesis Stadium to give Kagaya the chance to interact with all sorts of people and learn to enjoy what life had to offer. At the brilliant sight of the star-shaped city, Thea momentarily forgot all about her gloom and let out a cheer. It was not the first time she was visiting the famous city, but it was one of her favorite places in the whole world. Despite the fact that Thea and Kagaya had battled against each other only a few weeks before, in a manner befitting a child her age, Thea appeared to have forgiven and forgotten all about it. Once they landed and went through all the necessary procedures before being granted permission inside the city, Thea grabbed Kagaya's hand and ran ahead of her parents, talking excitedly and showing her all her favorite shops and places. Naruto and Diana grinned at the scene, their daughter's contagious excitement putting them in a good mood too. Although the rabbit goddess was a living example of what effect immortality could have on someone's mind and personality, Naruto was no longer worried. As long as Diana, Thea, and Kurama were in his life, he had no fear.